Okay, hey everyone. Welcome there on Facebook, YouTube, and of course here in the Zoom call. We're kind of letting people shuffle in. Momentarily, I'll introduce the program, and then after that, I'll introduce today's guest, who you sit with me now. Of course, we always like to make sure people have a few minutes to get settled. If you're out there on Facebook and YouTube, we're going to put some links into the chat there so you can jump in on the Zoom call and kind of have the live experience with the live audience that we have on Zoom. So go ahead and do that if you're sitting on the sidelines. We'd love to have you participate. And I'm not sure if we'll do it today. Sometimes we log off of social media a little bit early to encourage you to jump into the Zoom and be a part of the show. So we may watch out for that in the program. If we do so, again, we'll post the links and you can jump in the Zoom and participate there. All right. Well, I think it's time enough where we've got most people settled, and we want to start to introduce the program and tell you what we're doing here. So let's get into it. Welcome to Piano Tech Radio Hour. We gather here every Saturday to meet with and learn from the most fascinating and knowledgeable folks in the piano world. This includes manufacturers, rebuilders, musicians, makers of other instruments, and of course, piano techs. Our mutual goal is to become better at a craft, to help each other, and to create an ever more musical world together. Piano Tech Radio Hour is brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses, an online learning resource that brings you cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You can find out more at pianotechniciansmasterclass.com. And then this program that we're participating in today, you can subscribe to just this program called Piano Tech Radio Hour for $16 a month. You can get direct access to each week's private Zoom call, as well as the archival recordings of nearly 200 episodes at this point in our member area. You can join Piano Tech Radio Hour going to bit.ly/joinptrh. That's bit.ly/joinptrh. And then finally, just a reminder of kind of what's going on in the world of Piano Technicians Masterclasses these days. We've got a lot more activity than we have in the past. We're trying to ramp things up. So you'll see more activity on social media and blogs and so on and so forth. And of course, we have our masterclasses pretty much every third Thursday of the month. And we'll keep you up to date on those things. So this is the time we'll put a few of those links in the chat, both in Zoom here and on social media. But specifically, I want to make sure you don't forget about the podcast episodes. So again, these episodes, we're going to be releasing archival episodes as audio only, as well as newer episodes. We're trying to also get them out there. You can get to the podcast at pianotechradio.com. And if you want to know about our master classes in the member area and get a little sneak preview, we're putting blog posts out on Substack. pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com. We put the link in the chat, and we're putting out, kind of summaries or excerpts in, with some text and images to give you an idea of some of the things that you can learn about inside and walk away with a little useful information either way. Follow us on social media, go to LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, at Piano Technicians Masterclass, pretty much all those places. You'll find us. All right. And then always, as always, keep an eye out for our latest masterclass. Jump on in and join us there. Let's introduce our guest for today. He's patiently waiting, probably slightly fascinated by what's going on. I'll tell you why. His name is Lauren DeGiorgi, who is a pianist, a humorist, and composer. His journey as a classically trained pianist began very early on in this range of 3 to 5 years. And he has immersed himself since then in the world of classical music, creating, recording, producing. There's been hundreds of songs in various styles. When he was young, he liked to entertain his friends with musical antics. Very creative things you'll see. Playing songs in reverse, seamlessly blending a couple of melodies into one, reimagining some classical composition in some new style like jazz or rock, or a mix of jazz and Beethoven's Fifth or something. And today, Lauren has turned his creative endeavors into a kind of a social media phenomenon, to be honest. There's hundreds of thousands of followers across platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Now, I'll mention this here today, which probably doesn't get mentioned that much. Lauren actually spent several decades as a professional piano technician. And so he's kind of a perfect guest for this program. And then he can bring some musical abilities and talents and conversation. But also we can geek out on, how to tune the temperament if we want, I suppose. um, but yeah, so anyways, he's been composing for such a long time and developing all these unique ideas, and he's crafted compositions that you might find in music libraries, U.S., Canada, UK, and the tracks have graced Australian television and various sundry places, which is always kind of fun. You can find him on Bandcamp, releasing his latest music. So yeah, we'll tell you more about Lauren. We'll learn more about Lauren as we get into it, but let's welcome him to the program. Hello, Lauren.
Hello, Ethan. How are you?
Very good, very good.
Good.
Yeah, I really encourage people, you've definitely, you're one of those folks that have kind of found the ignition key to kind of social media stuff. You got the right personality for it. I don't know, maybe it took a while for you to kind of build up your techniques or something, but it's one of those things where I could watch it for, an hour just looking at these different videos and these different things that you've done. Very creative stuff. I want to get into your background. We talked about you starting early, but maybe even before we do that, let's jump in. Like, what happened? How did this social media kind of thing enter your life? Right? You're tuning pianos, you're playing for friends. What prompted you to kind of put things out there and kind of grow that part of your life?
Well, of course, I use social media to keep in touch with friends and family, just like everyone else does. But
Hmm.
I was actively tuning full time, and 2020 hit, and of course, the lockdowns happened, and the social distancing and the quarantine. And in my state, a lot of businesses that weren't considered essential, they so many things were just shut down. So I figured on a temporary basis, let me figure out something to do. And I started, this was right around the time when the short video format was becoming popular.
Hmm.
And I thought, well, let me go ahead and give this a try. So I think my first short video was just putting, just putting the current events of the day to music. And it just all snowballed from there.
Okay. And when you did that the first time, you said the current events of the day.
Mhm.
Um, you don't really sing, or did you at that time, or how did you communicate current events through music, with or without singing?
Well, what I did was there were memes at that time about the social distancing and that thing.
Okay.
Okay, so I remember the first one I did was because everybody was remember the quarantines were kind of this novel thing, you know,
Hmm. Oh
and
yeah.
they were all over. So I think my first one was I think you know the first month of quarantine, and it was and I did this run, and then the second month was. And then the third one, I just kind of got up and walked away from the piano because by that time everybody had had it, you know.
Right, 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 right.
So that was kind of my
Okay.
start with
Yeah.
it, and it all went from there. Yeah.
Right. So it's not lyrics, but you narrate them and you sort of explain what this is, and here's what if you did this and this, and so you don't use a lyrical way to kind of communicate things, but you do kind of explain. Okay, first month
Right.
of quarantine. Yeah. Well, let's go back to the early years. Like I said, um, you got into music very early. Is it just did you have a musical family, or is it just kind of they decided to give you this thing, this thing, this thing, and music panned out? How did it turn out that you kind of started so early?
I did come from a musical family. I'm the youngest. I have three older brothers, and they all played piano. My mom played piano. My dad uh, played violin, and he also was a violin maker. He was a
Oh,
luthier,
wow.
so he would make violins and cellos. And
Neat.
so, I just growing up hearing music from an early age, I just figured that's just what you did. You reached a certain age and you would start to play. And I always had a good ear, so I would go to the piano and start picking out what I heard my older brothers play.
Mhm.
And that was how I got my start from
All right.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. There's one musician that I'm sure you're aware of, that captures my imagination as having a musical family is Jacob Collier. And it's always fun to imagine being him growing up, having a room full of instruments and all these things, where music was so natural and people were sitting together. Are you familiar with Jacob Collier much?
No, I'm not.
You should check him out. You would definitely like Jacob Collier. He's a younger guy, although he's been around for maybe 5 or 10 years now. And he's very nerdy in terms of music theory. It's like when he talks about music theory, you're like, whoa, he's just like going to all these concepts and techniques and styles that you're like, that's deep, like
Mhm.
I don't, most people don't even think, most musicians don't even think about it that deeply. But he makes like popular music, and he actually recorded, I think he recorded like a Stevie Wonder song, just at home, like in his own home studio, and it was so great. So many people saw it that somebody forwarded it to Quincy Jones, and ultimately Quincy Jones reached out to him and basically invited to produce an album for him, which
Wow.
ultimately I think was just recorded in his own room
Wow.
because he was just doing all this stuff in his kind of own home and studio. So
Mhm.
I definitely think you probably see him in, might not remember, but you'll definitely get into it. But yeah, I love this idea of musical family, and we try to bring music into my son's life, give him cello lessons and show him things around the piano. I also am familiar with a luthier in my area that I've worked with. I'm in Elmhurst, Illinois. There's a guy who doesn't make them as much as repairing them and kind of like selling them,
Mhm.
but I'm sure he could make one if he wanted to. So that's interesting, you know, this whole piano tuner thing. A lot of people who are musical, or a lot of the people who get into piano tuning, they're musical and think, oh, this is great. This is like a way that I can be musical and make some money. Is that the story for you? And did the fact that your dad was sort of an instrument technician affect your interest in that and your affinity to go in that domain?
Well, I knew I always wanted to write music. Okay, and I knew I always wanted to compose music. And I started. I went to college for music, but I quickly just decided that I'd been out of high school and I really didn't want to spend any more time in the classroom. It's so suited for some, but it just wasn't for me. I wanted to get out.
Hmm.
So I was out. I was out doing a lot of playing, cocktail lounges and that kind of thing. But I also reached a point where I wanted to have a dependable something income, something that I could, something that was in demand and something that I could, use my ear for. So that I started practicing tuning my own piano, which
Hmm.
is a nice little grand, and that was really how I got my start. And it's funny because I always had a good ear, but I thought, oh, this will be a piece of cake. How hard can it be to tune a piano, right? Well, I, you know, I'm sure I don't need to tell you the rude awakening that
Right,
soon followed.
right, right. I always have to tell. I'm kind of in the domain of bringing people into the field, and
Uh-huh.
I always, it's also hard to teach people once you've gotten used to everything. You forget what the initial obstacles are. But I always remember to tell them, okay, so tuning a piano, there's a few factors well beyond just having a good ear. There's like the mechanic, like understanding the mechanics of the instrument and how it's going to behave when you move that. You can get the pitch right, but is it going to stay there? That's a whole thing you're going to have to learn outside of actually getting it in tune, which is its own thing that you have to be good at. And then, your body. has to learn how to handle the tuning hammer and
Hmm.
sort of approach the actual physical act of tuning. Because again, you can be like, that's in tune. And then you're like, wait, why couldn't I get it there? You know?
Hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot to it. And was this your kind of primary, that was your primary profession there up until the pandemic? Or did you sort of do some other things, maybe teaching or other musical gigging or something like that? How did it
I
pan
did,
out?
yeah, I did a lot of gigging. The 80s were wonderful years for lounge piano, you
Okay.
know, because I mean, literally every weekend was spent either at a country club or a lounge or a supper club, private events where I was I was that guy kind of playing the grand piano in the corner. So I did a lot of performing that way, a lot of gigging. And I did give private lessons, private piano lessons for a while too. So, between that and the tuning, but tuning became, the bread and butter.
hmm hmm
Yeah.
And tell me how deep you got into that world, because I had only recently discovered this. We found you because of your sort of musical abilities and your social media. But I was searching for you, and you had a sort of like a shutdown site. Yeah, yeah, I used to tune pianos, but check out this other stuff. How deep did you get into it? Were you sort of mostly just tuning? Did you do any sort of regulation, voicing, other related things on the piano?
Mostly tuning.
Hmm
I did a lot of tuning. I was at my peak, I was contracting with four colleges,
hmm
so I did that. So a lot of tuning there, concert tuning, some regulation, a lot of repairs.
hmm
Never really got into the rebuilding
hmm
just because you know how you really need to be set up for that uh, to make it viable.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and I also liked being out on the road and meeting customers, as opposed to being in the shop all day.
How much did you so we're gonna maybe check out a few clips of what you do so that people
Okay.
can see what we're talking about in a minute. But how much did you bring that into your piano tuning? Like so you finished tuning the piano, and I always enjoy it. I don't tune as much these days either. I'm sort of running businesses, helping other people get out there and tune, but I always enjoyed that. Like I play a little music and people would appreciate it. We'd have a little conversation. Did you kind of share these quirky, kind of creative piano ideas with people after you would tune it, or are you just like, oh, I'll just play like a standard thing and I'll share that with just my friends? Or uh, how did that fit into your piano tuning, gigs?
Yeah, I didn't really do any of the musical antics for
Okay,
the customers, unless it was a friend who knew what I did. But
right.
usually it was like I would like to play the piano as I progressed through the various stages. I would play a song. But towards the end, it was more like, do you have a favorite song? What would you like to hear? And so
hmm
I would either do something, either classical or something popular. So yeah,
Right.
pretty much when I was out tuning, I just kept it to straight playing.
All right. Well, let's check out a couple of videos so people know exactly what we're talking about. And
Okay.
again, I think once people discover it, they'll get excited to find out more. All right. Let me do this and make sure I share the sound in the video. And we'll pop. So we selected two here. Do you want to maybe explain beforehand what we're gonna see here, or should we just pop it in and check it out?
This is I was reimagining, what the famous composers would have sounded like from the past had they been in the present day doing lounge piano, because I'm so familiar with doing lounge. So this was the result.
All right, let's check that out.
Okay, so we all know what Beethoven sounds like as a classical composer, right? Well, what if Beethoven played a lounge piano instead? And how about Brahms? Everybody knows Brahms' famous lullaby. What would happen if you put Brahms in a lounge piano setting?
Chopin, famous composer from the Romantic period, known for his Fantasy Impromptu, among other things. Okay, so what if you put Chopin as a lounge piano? Last but not least, let's take Mozart, his famous rondo. How would Mozart do as a lounge pianist? There you go. It's kind of fun, isn't it? So if you can think of any other composers you would like me to loungeify, leave them in the comments.
Nice.
Thanks.
Let's stop there. We'll check out another one after that. I definitely got a few questions. So, I mean, I studied piano professionally. I can improvise. I can play jazz. But I have to say, even when I see that, I'm kind of jealous. You know, I didn't study classical music. And so I don't have either the repertoire under my fingers or the kind of, ability to then take that repertoire and play. I might actually be better at the second part, right? If you give me the melody of it, then I could, and I could look at the sheet music, then I could make something up that kind of sounds like it, but it's like jazzed up. Um, how, how long does it take you to kind of think something like, put like something like that together? Does it come pretty naturally since if you already know the piece, things like that?
It does come pretty naturally. I'll listen through it in my head first,
Hmm.
and just honestly, it does. It just seems to come naturally. The chord, I kind of can feel what chords to play,
Hmm.
you know, and do it, and it just kind of comes out.
That's really cool. Yeah. So I'm tempted to say you have a gift, but also I don't want to diminish all the hard work you might have put in, right? To kind of understand music. How much of this feels like, well, I just worked really hard. I learned a lot of pieces. I practiced a lot, da da da. And yes, and this kind of comes out naturally from this versus it does kind of feel like a gift that you had where once you even just started learning a couple little tunes, you always had this ability to kind of run with them and do something interesting.
The the technical, the technique of the classical, like say Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu, that's work. That's work. That takes practice to get the dexterity and just to be able to play it.
Hmm.
So that's really where the work is involved. Turning it into the lounge, like I said, that part just seems to come naturally.
Hmm.
It just the best way to put it is it just kind of happens. You know,
Very
yeah.
cool. Well, I'm glad that you can have that. That's really wonderful. I'm actually trying to imagine because sometimes when I play piano at my own house, my family's like, it's too loud. Like, just we're trying to watch this video, or like they're not that impressed. Is
Right.
it how is it in your own home? Do you get a chance to share this with your family much, or are they like, yeah, I've heard enough of that stuff?
No, yeah, I do. I do.
You
My
do?
wife,
Okay,
yeah, I play for my wife. She enjoys hearing me
nice.
play, and yeah,
That's great.
so it's fun. I'll run things past, the grandkids or my daughter, and so yeah, they enjoy it.
That's great. I love it. And you studied when you went to Berkeley, right?
Briefly, yeah, I
Briefly.
spent a
Oh,
semester there. Yeah,
oh, okay,
that was
okay.
it. That was
That was it.
yeah. I was itching to get out of the classroom and just
Yeah,
kind of get on with something musical. Yeah.
yeah. And in terms of classical music studies, what was that like? Did you have a series of classical music mentors? Which is a lot of this just your own interest in picking up sheet music and listening to records. Like, how did your classical music, repertoire and evolution evolve? Because, maybe it was a little bit more natural when you were coming up, but picking up a classical music repertoire is no small thing.
Well, again, there was a lot of interest in classical music in my house growing up
Okay.
because of my older brothers playing.
Hmm.
And we all took from the same teacher. So when I started taking lessons around 5, I kept that same teacher through my high school graduation. Now, she was a very strict teacher and she was a very good teacher. And, from early on, I think once we got past, the first couple of primer books, she got me right into like first lessons in Bach, where you were
Hmm.
playing, just the basic minuet.
Hmm.
And from there, that's how she just introduced me to, Bach, Beethoven, Clementi, Chopin, Grieg, just all of the great composers. And so I owe a lot of it to her. She was just a very good teacher, and she introduced me really to the world of classical music.
That's wonderful. Let's talk about something that you mentioned there really briefly. And this
Yeah.
applies to all sorts of different domains, from learning classical music to being a piano technician to, doing anything else where we're expressing ourselves and learning something. You said she was a pretty strict teacher.
Hmm.
I want, and it's interesting. There's kind of like I'm noticing a bit of a contrast here. You're kind of fun, and I feel like, I don't know, if I took lessons from you, I'm trying to think, what would it be like? Would you constantly be like, well, let's make this interesting for you. Let's do this, or would you harken back to your teacher's strictness and be like, this is fun, but if you want to do this, gotta do that. What, what's your approach to this idea of like strictness and learning and the evolution over the past couple of decades? Because I do think it's changed quite a bit.
If I were teaching today, I would I would probably focus on uh, exercising the student's creativity. I
Hmm.
would probably be saying, have some fun with this piece, have some fun with this, learn it, learn the basics, learn theory, but then just let your imagination go with it. You
Hmm.
know, um, I just like the idea of music not, uh, I don't like trying to contain it or trying to keep it in a box, you
Sure.
know. And I think that's kind of where, the position I'm operating from. Even when I do these mashups,
Hmm.
or reimagining a song in a different style, it's just like, this is really fun, and there really is no limit to what you can do. So yeah, I would encourage the creativity and yeah, have fun with it definitely.
All right. One question deeper on that.
Yeah.
So uh, I remember when I was taking lessons as a kid, the teacher would have a lesson and I had to practice the thing. And I was the thing where I would just make up my own song and the teacher would come in and they say, what did you practice? I'd be like, look at this song that I wrote. So I was really excited about the instrument, but I would practice my own little music and compositions, and I didn't always get to the stuff that she had put together. And then also, it was always like totally out there, like the compositions I made. There's so much dissonance, and I remember one time she was like, "You should check out Alba and Berg." And like 12 tone music. It's like,
Uh-huh.
okay. When I listened, I was like, this is what she thinks of my compositions.
Yeah.
But yes, how much was that entertained, in your, even though there was some strictness around, you've got to learn this and technique and, repertoire and all these things. How was that entertained by your teacher? Hey, cool, you did something creative with it.
Well, we spent the early part of the lesson was finger exercises and scales, and we would go through, whatever my assignments were. And on a good week, when I'd practiced and I'd had everything right, we'd have, 10, 15 minutes left over. And that was when she would say, "So did you play that piece that you said you were working on?"
Okay.
And when I expressed an interest in notating it because I wanted to get something copyrighted, she made it a point to take, the tail end of those lessons to help me notate, you know. So that's something that always stuck with me. I thought,
Hmm.
as strict as she was,
Yeah,
um, she did encourage that. So I'm grateful.
wonderful. I think maybe it's a good time we'll check out another video. Let me cue that one up and let's see what's going on there.
If you took Debussy and blended his music with Beethoven, Debutoven.
Very cool.
Great, thanks.
So so this is a similar thing where these ideas just pop into your head. So I guess my question is, if this were me, I think I would probably be playing the Beethoven thing, working up something with it, or just playing it for fun or whatever, and then I'd start messing around with it, and something would come out, and then maybe I'll go share that. At this point, I'm sure it started with you coming up with things. Are you sitting down and be like, I'd like to make a video today. What's it going to be? Let's do WSC and Beethoven, or is it more you're playing? And then you're like, oh, what if I mix these? Oh, cool. I'll make a video on that. Or does it happen in your head, not while you're playing? Or is it a mix of all those things?
It's exactly as you said first. It's in the morning. I'm sitting. I get up pretty early and
Mhm.
just thinking about, okay, what am I? I'm going to do a reel today. So what do I want to do? I think I'll do a mashup, and that's when I'll start thinking. That I'll start hearing the melodies in my head and trying to pick two that will go together.
Hmm.
And that's when I came up with, using Moonlight Sonata as a bed and overlaying Clair de Lune over it. And I thought, yeah, that could maybe work. So, and then at that point, that's when I go to the piano and try it out and just kind of
Mm,
work out whatever kinks there are. So yeah,
interesting.
it's you know deliberately looking for a mashup to do and then just starting to work with it that way.
That's cool. That's cool. I'm always fascinated with kind of like the creative process, the inspiration process.
Uh-huh.
And I've done often, I like kind of exercises for creativity as well. Like, oh, let's you know, oh, we had a guest on who's also had been piano tuning, then they became an astrophysicist, and they're doing
Mm,
astronomy and things with the stars and things like that. And we
wow.
talk about that a little bit. And he's also happens, which is kind of funny, happens to be into astrology, which some astronomers are like totally not into. But so he's into that. And so we talked about, what if you took the zodiac signs and aligned it with the different keys, signatures, and you wrote a piece for every zodiac sign in those different keys, like around the circle of fifths.
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. So I like things like that where you put a constraint on it. There's
Hmm.
a famous quote from Stravinsky about how constraints, free you from the shackles of free the spirit from shackles or something like that. So I just like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
Um, what's it like to be able to celebrate these moments of inspiration and creativity with so many people now? Because I'm sure, again, it's fun for you just to even do this on your own. But what's it like to get that feedback loop and like you're like, oh yeah, other people are into this too. They think it's fun. I guess you got that from your family and lounge, but now it's like a global thing that's going on. Tell me about that.
Well, it surprised me really that it took off the way it did because, I've spent a lot of my life writing music and I'd release songs on Spotify and everything, and so spent a lot of my life trying to get people to listen to like the music that I was writing, and then all of a sudden, just playing this backwards or playing this, upside down or whatever was what took off, and it's sort of like
Right.
this musical humor, which I thought was kind of funny because I never really saw myself as, a comedian or anything like that, you know.
Yeah.
But so that still continues to surprise me.
Yeah. Who is the famous guy? He's done it for years. That's what he would do. He would play piano and make jokes and things like that. I can't think of his name.
Oh,
You know what I'm talking about?
Victor
Victor
Borg.
Borga. Yeah,
Oh,
like he's the quintessential comedian pianist. I think there's a couple others
oh yeah,
too. Well, there's
yeah.
like a political guy.
He's just a legend. I mean, just a brilliant concert pianist, and then he just did the funniest things that I still like to listen to him, to watch him. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Um, so fascinating process of musical inspiration. You're tuning pianos. You kind of did this during the pandemic. It started to take over. Do you have a habit now? Like, how committed are you to this? Is it something that um, various people like for in our case, I put out a video every week for
Mhm.
Piano Tech Radio Hour. Now, at first, it actually this is very interesting. Similar thing. Pandemic. What are we going to do? All the piano tutors are out of work. We're all thinking we'll never work again, or
Mhm.
whatever. And so we started this thing where we said, let's all get together. And at first, when we did this, there would be, I did an online event during the pandemic. There were hundreds, and there were over 500 piano technicians involved in this online thing. And, which is not as easy these days because they're working now. But
Right.
we could still get plenty. And we were doing this before the pandemic. It just happened to coincide with our sort of niche. But but yeah, I'm doing it every week. There's a business that goes along with it that was already in existence. And a lot of people do that. They commit to like, oh, I'm going to post this. I'm doing it for sort of in business purpose or networking purpose. Or, what's your attitude towards this? Like, are you like, I'm going to just keep doing this. It's fun. Are you like trying to develop it in a very intentional way?
I am trying to develop it in an intentional way,
Hmm.
yeah, I do find I find myself committed to it. It's kind of like my career after my career.
Hmm.
I'd like to move forward with it. So yeah, I aim to be consistent, to post consistently. I'm always looking for new ways to engage with those who are watching, new content to offer, trying to come up with new ideas. I would like to do some live performances, some live shows.
Hmm.
So those are things that are in the works. And yeah, I would like to continue to grow this.
Okay. Very good. Well, we're behind you. Whatever we can do to help.
Thank
Um,
you.
it reminds me of, in some ways, there's a musical group. I'm trying to think of their name, the Something Brothers. Have you ever heard of this Auto Tune the News thing? Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So I was piano tuning in New York, and my business is in New York for piano tuning.
Mhm.
And so I went and tuned this guy's piano. He had this little studio, and there was a handful of people at like computers doing stuff, and they had this little spinet piano, and I tuned it. And we got to talking afterwards. What do you do? And he's like, oh, it's really weird. I don't really know how to explain it. We're kind of like musical comedians, and we have like you do post videos online, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. He's like, I'll send you a link. So I went home and I saw, and it was this, there was this thing that was like hide your wife, hide your somebody like this. It was some news like clip, right? And then they
Mhm.
had auto tuned it and made music out of it and put it together. It's like, oh, I already seen that, and
Mhm.
because it becomes so popular. But they did something similar where that had become this phenomenon, and they continued to do it and double down on it because it was just working, right? And they could get sponsors, things, people commission to do stuff, but ultimately they also just they were a band. They like to play music. And so then they kind of took that and turned it into the opportunity to tour and play music and start to incorporate it or not, depending on the situation. So
Mhm.
yeah, that sounds like an interesting path. It's always funny what life delivers us.
It is. It is. Yeah. It just things happen by almost by accident, and it catches you by surprise.
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that I'm most appreciative of and aspire to through all of these sets of things is your ability to connect with people all over the world.
Hmm.
Um, I love that we have people in Belgium that are listening to this and reaching out and connecting with us, and you know all these sorts of places like Indonesia and China and Latin America, and the sort of Nordic countries and Europe and France and all these different places. It's how could you connect with all these people otherwise? So I don't know if you desire it, but if I was you, I'd be like, I'm gonna go to all these different places now these people know of me, and I'm gonna go play where they are. I think it'd be fun.
Yeah.
Too much of a traveler?
I haven't really done traditionally a whole lot of travel, but I'm looking, like I said, I at least want to start off doing some shows, national within the United States here, you
Hmm.
know, and just maybe starting off regionally and then branching out from there, maybe like in a 3 or 4 state area. But
Very cool.
yeah.
Um, and then how about, I mean, this is a situation where you're doing this, and this is like one of the first time you've done an actual like long form podcast, right? But you
Hmm.
haven't been doing many of these. So this is clearly an example of something that this led to that or whatever.
Hmm.
Any other interesting stories of connections that you've made? Or at this point, is it mostly just little, chats and comments and things like that? Or have you kind of run into any kindred spirits or anything like that?
It's nice to run into a lot of music lovers,
Hmm.
and of course, fellow technicians, just like we're doing right here.
Hmm.
So that part's nice because, you're not only engaging through technology all these people, but you're also relating to them, and they're relating to you too. So yeah, it's fun meeting music lovers, pianists, string musicians, performing musicians, and it's just a lot of fun.
Cool. What kind of piano? Do you have an acoustic piano?
I do have an acoustic piano. Yeah, I still have the one that I learned to play on. It's a
Oh, wow.
Kurtzman Grand from 1930. So I'm sure you've probably worked on your share of Kurtzmans. They're a nice little instrument. Yeah,
Hmm. Very
yeah.
cool. Um, so we touched upon this a little bit, but and also maybe we'll see if there's something else it's another video we can try out, check out, or see if there's anything we want to try out on the spot here. I don't know, little fun improvisational thing. Let me know if you have any ideas.
Oh,
But yeah. But before we go there, we touched upon it, but I just want to dive into it specifically. Where do you see this going, or where just your life and career in general, in the coming years, you mentioned going to some performances and touring, more recording, like anything specific that you're intentionally seeing for the farther future?
you know, Ethan, I've always loved performing.
Hmm.
I've always loved performing ever since that first piano recital.
Hmm.
When we were all kids. So I would like to see it going with more live shows and meeting people,
Hmm.
that way. So that and continuing to compose and release music that way. I've always had a dream of you know coming up with a soundtrack for a movie or a show or something like that. So that would be probably what I'm going to be striving for.
Perfect. And where
Yeah,
are you located in California? Is that right? Where are you?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Oh, you're in Pennsylvania. I
Uh,
got saw someone else when I was Googling. Where in Pennsylvania? You're near Philadelphia or more in the kind of middle of?
I'm on the western, yeah, western side of the state
Okay.
near Pittsburgh. Yeah,
Okay. Cool. I've heard Pittsburgh is a nice place.
yeah, it is. It is.
Um,
I'm not from there, but I'm, in that vicinity. I'm about 50
yeah,
miles away from it, but
you're a fellow Midwesterner or
right.
mid something or I'm from
Yeah.
Michigan originally. I'm actually traveling there right now to go visit a piano technician, Dean Rayburn, the inventor of the Cyber Tuner. Did you ever come across the Cyber Tuner?
The Cyber Tuner and the Cyber Hammer, which always loved tuning uprights with.
Nice. And I
Yeah.
don't know if it was him or his son that created the Cyber Hammer. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I forget. But anyways, I'm gonna go visit them in Michigan right now in a
Oh,
few hours.
wonderful.
Um, so yeah. Let's just play around a little bit here.
Okay.
Uh, first of all, are there like ideas in your head already, or should I come up with some suggestion, or what's popping around in that brain of yours, that musical brain?
Let's see. How about, um, can you hear that?
I can hear
How
it. Yeah.
how about like maybe Mozart, the Mozart Piano Sonata, I think it's number 16.
Sure.
I don't know, want to try it in lounge maybe or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Let's
So,
do it.
something like
Nice.
that. So
That's
yeah,
awesome.
and you just go with it, you know.
And have you done that before, or maybe something similar, or
Not with that one, no.
not with
But
that one?
but I played so much lounge piano in my life, like we talked earlier,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
it's just a I don't know, it's just a fun style to play.
yeah, yeah. You have the chord changes under your fingers and the sort of modifications that often get made in a lounge piano setting. Like those sort of they're sort of some altered chords
Oh
that
yeah.
you're using, and yeah, I can tell the pattern. I want to sit down and try it now.
Lots of major sevenths, in lounge, just lots of major sevenths, major sixths, you know, you know,
Nice, nice. How about a blues? Same song.
blues.
I feel like you could do a blues on that.
Yeah, on the Mozart, on the same.
I don't know. Just putting you on the spot. Yeah.
Something like that.
Nice. Nice. Wow. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. Yeah, you're making me want to sit down and work out my music a little bit more. It's really
Now
wonderful.
you see, now see that makes me feel good because I'll hear that in the comments. It's like, now I'm inspired to play, or I'm going to get my piano back out. I put it away 10 years ago and I haven't looked at it. So when I hear that, like even when you
Hmm.
just said that now it makes you want to play, that's like one of the most fulfilling things. It's just, you know, knowing that people are rekindling an interest in music.
Totally. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I find I've lived long enough. I'm in my 40s now. I've lived long enough that I it's hard for me to remember that fresh appreciation for the actual I have skills and abilities that are pretty impressive, just like you do, right? I mean, this is very
Yeah.
impressive what you could do. Sometimes I sit down at the piano and I start playing and I go, this is good stuff. Like you really know, what you're doing here.
Mhm.
And I almost surprise myself. And it's just some of it's just part of life. You can only do so many things, right? So yeah,
Right.
it's not that it's not that I've abandoned it per se. There's just other things to do, and you don't have the time to fit it in. Um,
Sure.
so you just have to make those choices. But I'm very craving that lately. Just more music, more creativity in my life. It's definitely a big part of
Well, that's
what
good.
I'm
Well,
hoping to pursue. So yeah.
good. Good.
Who inspires you? Are you keeping up with other um, musicians out there, other people on social media that you're finding interesting, doing similar or unique things?
I do go through and I listen to a few that honestly the names are escaping me right now. But as far as like musical influences, I've always been, a huge Beatles fan, and of course
Mm.
all the classical music, you know.
Hmm.
But
Well, our guest a few weeks ago, Jim Wilson. Are you familiar with Jim Wilson?
uh, don't think so.
Check out that episode. You'll be jealous because he was a piano tuner. He moved from Texas to Los Angeles to go seek his fortune, as a
Hmm.
musician. But he learned how to tune piano and he got into that world. When he arrived, he met a few studio musicians and, they all linked him up with, LA music scene, and all of a sudden he's tuning for Chick Corea and,
Well,
all the really great players.
uh-huh.
And then he gets invited to be a part of the first MIDI installations into acoustic pianos.
Oh,
So it's sort of MIDI mods is what they called it at the time.
mhm.
And for a while, he was the only guy. Like, here's this new thing. It's the MIDI mod. You could take your piano and you could play strings along with it while you're just playing the acoustic piano. It's so cool. Oh, I want it. Oh, there's only one guy that's going to install it for you. It's this guy, Jim, And then they would ship him all over the world um, to do this,
Mhm.
Paul McCartney,
Oof.
Genesis, like all these different places. So his book is for pre-sale right now. We were promoting it when he was on the show, but same thing, a piano tuner. He ended up being part of the story of the book is he ended up finding his own passion and recording his music and pursuing his own creative career after doing all this. But there's a handful of stories in the book, the prologue, actually, which we read through in the episode that we recorded, where, you know, he gets to show up and meet Paul McCartney and sit down on a piano bench with him and play a few tunes and, you know, recommend a chord sequence, like whatever.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm sure you would have loved to be there and potentially live vicariously through that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I mean, imagine meeting Paul McCartney, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen this documentary yet where I think they go back through like Beatles recordings or something. There's some documentary. I need to check that out.
Uh,
And also I've been listening to a podcast where Paul McCartney talks to the poet Paul Muldoon, and they talk about the lyrics of the various songs and kind of like the environment and the history behind it. It's very fun.
Mhm.
All right, well, we're going to be wrapping up here soon. It's almost the end of the hour. I want to make sure that people can go find out about this stuff, so and find out ways to support you and follow along. Where would you send them?
Well, I've got profiles on all of the major social media platforms. So, they can find me on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads. So yeah. And I go by my name on all of those. So if they just search for Lauren DeGiorgi, they'll find me there. Yeah.
Perfect. And I'll spell it out in case somebody's just listening. LORENDIGIORGI.
Right.
Awesome.
Correct. Mhm.
Any other final comments or thoughts for the audience out there?
Well, for one thing, I really want to thank you for having me on here. It's just really enjoyable meeting you. We've exchanged emails over the past couple of weeks, but good to meet you and have this. So thank you for that. And I just would love if people who are thinking about music or who have had music and they don't, for whatever reason, play anymore, if they would just maybe, consider dusting it off and giving it a try again because it just adds a whole lot of fun to life.
I totally agree. Yeah,
Yeah.
music. People need not just listening to music. They need to play it themselves. I mean, definitely need to go out and listen to live music and listen to records and all this stuff. But to play an instrument, it's so nourishing, right, for the soul and the brain and all these wonderful things, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, wonderful. Well, I'll do the outro here and we'll sign off. We've reached the end of another musical journey here at Piano Tech Radio Hour. So thanks again to Lauren DeGiorgi for joining us today, as well as our live audience here in Zoom. As always, we're brought to you by Piano Technicians Masterclasses. This is cutting-edge instruction from piano industry masters without leaving your home. You join us just today by signing up for the session individually. Make your life easier, more convenient. Subscribe to PTRH at just $16 a month. You get the recording of a day's session in our member area, automatic registration for each week's new session. You can sign up at bit.ly/join PTRH. That's bit.ly/join PTRH. And again, make sure to look us up on social media, Piano Technicians Masterclass. Check out the Piano Tech Radio Hour podcast at pianotechradio.com, as well as checking out our Substack blog, where we're releasing some great content, which is behind the paywall normally, but you can kind of get a sneak peek into what we're doing there in our blog at pianotechniciansmasterclass.substack.com. And on the socials, it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. All right. Thank you very much, Lauren. Thank you, everyone who's been here. We'll see you again.